Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We take complex research, stacks of sources, and pull out the essential insights for you. Quick, actionable knowledge. Today we're getting into the security side of something pretty cutting edge. The Model Context Protocol, or MCP. That's Anthropic's framework, letting AI models talk to live data, use external tools. It's a huge step, right? Gives AI these incredible new powers. But, and this is the big but, that power creates some serious enterprise-level security headaches. Things that your standard API security, perimeter stuff just isn't designed for. We're talking new ways things can go wrong.
Exactly. And the sources we looked at, they go beyond just pointing out vulnerabilities. They actually lay out actionable security frameworks. Think zero trust, defense in depth, but specifically tailored for this environment. We need this to tackle threats like tool poisoning, which we'll get into. It's really fundamental for building trustworthy AI governance. And just for context, the analysis, it's grounded in a systematic approach, looking at the whole AI system layer by layer. Think Micastro framework, that kind of structured view.
Okay, let's break it down then. Before we talk security, what is MCP? What are the main pieces we need to understand?
Right, good place to start. MCP has three core components that manage the interaction. First up is the MCP host.
Okay.
That's basically the AI application itself, where the AI agent lives and works. Could be Claude Desktop, maybe an AI built into your company's coding tools, like Cursor.
Got it. The application running the AI. What's next?
Next is the MCP client. Think of it as the secure messenger. It sits inside the host environment and manages the communication flow between the host and the server, make sure it's secure, formatted right.
So host is the app, client is the messenger, which leaves the server. Sounds important.
It is. The MCP server is really the critical gateway and the main source of the new risks, frankly. It does three key things. First, tools. This lets the AI call out to external services, APIs, think payment systems, databases, you name it. This is the big one for security focus.
Okay, tools. What else?
Second, resources. This is how the server exposes specific data sets to the model. So files, database tables, things like that, but in a controlled way.
All right.
And third, prompts. These are reusable templates. Helps keep interactions consistent, simplifies things for the AI and the user. But what's really interesting and challenging is that dynamic nature of the tools part. The AI model itself is deciding which tool, which potential executable to run based on the task.
So it's not just a predefined API call.
Exactly. That dynamic execution based on, semantic understanding pushes the security problem way beyond just checking network connections. The risk shifts to the meaning of the instruction itself.
Right, the semantic risk. That's where it gets tricky. So yeah, normal API vulnerabilities might still exist, but MCP brings this whole new category. You mentioned tool poisoning. That sounds bad. What is that exactly?
It is bad. Tool poisoning is essentially manipulating the description or the parameters of a tool, the very information the AI uses to understand what the tool does and how to use it.
So you're tricking the AI.
Precisely. The goal is to fool the AI agent into doing something it shouldn't, something harmful or unintended, by feeding it bad instructions disguised as legitimate tool info.
Okay, let me see if I get this. An attacker doesn't hack the code of, say, a search customer database tool. Instead, they change its description in the MCP server registry to something like run emergency data wipe on customer database.
That's exactly the kind of scenario. The AI sees the description, trusts it, and might execute a dangerous command it thinks is appropriate for the task described. It's an instruction manipulation attack.
And the fallout could be huge. Data leaks, unauthorized actions.
Potentially real-world harm, too, if these MCP systems are connected to things like industrial controls or, financial transaction platforms. And looking at this systematically, using frameworks like Maestro, it highlights that tool poisoning isn't the only issue. We see other major enterprise risks.
Like what?
Well, data exfiltration is a big one, sneaking sensitive data out through manipulated tool responses or maybe compromised tools themselves. Then there's the potential for command and control, or C2.
Setting up hidden channels.
Yeah, establishing covert communication back to an attacker, maybe through what looks like normal MCP server traffic. And critically, identity and access control subversion, exploiting flaws in how the AI agent gets authorized to act, especially if it's acting for a privileged user. That's a layer 3 threat in some frameworks.
Okay, so if these tools are like dynamic code snippets, the supply chain for the AI's actions, how do we secure them? Clearly, just putting a firewall around the MCP server isn't enough. What are the key steps?
You're right. Perimeter security is insufficient. The core idea has to be treating every single tool like a potentially high-risk executable, not just some static description. So the first actionable strategy is robust tool vetting and onboarding. You absolutely must have security reviews before a tool is even allowed into the MCP environment.
What kind of reviews?
We're talking static analysis S to check the code itself, dynamic analysis DAS to watch how it behaves when it runs, and crucially, software composition analysis, or SCA.
Checking the dependencies.
Exactly, and making sure the libraries, the tool uses don't have known vulnerabilities. You need to vet the entire supply chain of that tool, and maybe even require periodic recertification.
Okay, vetting the tool's code and behavior up front. That makes sense. But what about that poisoning attack, where the description gets messed with? How do we stop that?
Ah, good point. That leads straight to the second key strategy. A strong content security policy specifically for the tool descriptions. Meaning you need a very strict, approved format, a schema for what can even be in a tool description. Then you need rigorous sanitization and validation processes to strip out anything unexpected or active, like script tags that could be used in an injection attack.
So clean up the descriptions.
And crucially, to prevent tampering after approval, you need cryptographic signing. The approved description gets signed, and the system verifies the signature every time it's accessed, ensures integrity.
Okay, signing prevents static tampering. But you mentioned attacks that only show up when the tool actually runs. How do we catch a tool that looks clean but then does something malicious?
That requires the third strategy, advanced behavioral monitoring. This is where things get quite sophisticated. First, you need to establish a baseline.
A baseline?
Yeah, behavioral baseline for each tool. What's its normal pattern? How much CPU does it usually use? What network addresses does it normally talk to? What files does it access?
So you profile its normal activity.
Right. Then, especially for high-risk tools, you run them in isolated sandbox environments. You watch them execute. If a tool suddenly deviates from its known good baseline, maybe it tries to open a weird network connection it never has before the sandbox flags it, maybe even terminates it.
Ah, so you catch the bad behavior in a safe space before it does damage.
Exactly. It's the only real way to catch those more sophisticated attacks that hide until runtime. Now, if we sort of zoom out, connect this to the bigger security picture, the speed and complexity here really scream for a never trust, always verify approach, which brings us to zero trust architecture, ZTA, but adapted for AI agents.
Zero trust for MCP. How does that work in practice?
Well, a core principle is just-in-time, or JIT, access provisioning. Get rid of standing privileges. Don't let an AI agent or the user it represents have access permissions just sitting there.
So access is granted only when needed.
And only for the specific task at hand, for the minimum time required. The decision to grant access needs to be context-aware, too. Check the device's security posture, the nature of the task, the user's identity, all in real time. Then issue temporary, short-lived credentials.
Now, wait a second. JIT systems, even in regular IT, can be complex, sometimes add latency. If you're doing this constant context checking for an AI that's meant to be fast, doesn't that slow things down, risk negating the whole point?
That is absolutely the core tension. It's a massive engineering challenge. You need highly optimized systems, but you cannot sacrifice the validation for speed. If you do, the whole security model collapses.
Okay, so it's a necessary trade-off.
It is. And that need for optimized yet rigorous control leads to the next piece. Enhanced OAuth 2.0 plus ARI, we're talking mandatory multi-factor authentication always, and issuing very short-lived access tokens.
Short-lived tokens, okay.
And importantly, tokens that are sender-constrained, maybe using protocols like DPoP and have the absolute narrowest possible scope. Strict least privilege enforced right in the token itself. Minimize the blast radius if a token is compromised. And this all ties into probably the most critical ZTA practice for MCP, continuous validation. Security isn't just logging in once.
You mean rechecking constantly?
Well, for every single MCP request. We call it per request authorization. Every time the agent wants to use a tool or access a resource, its authorization is revalidated based on current context. We also need user and entity behavior analytics, UBIBA, running constantly to spot weird deviations mid-session.
Wow. So authorization isn't a gate you pass through once. It's like a continuous heartbeat check.
That's a good way to put it. Given the potential speed and volume of actions an AI agent can take, you have to move security from the perimeter to the transaction level itself.
Makes sense, especially with sensitive data potentially flying around. So, switching gears slightly to operational security. We've secured the tools, the access flow. What about the data that comes out of the MCP system? How do we protect that?
Great question. Securing the output is crucial. You need output filtering and integrated data loss prevention. DLP.
Meaning you scan the results.
Yes. Every response coming back from the MCP server before it goes to the client or the AI needs inspection. You absolutely have to route these responses through your enterprise DLP solutions.
The catch, PII, financial data?
Exactly. Block sensitive categories outright and use things like pattern-based redaction, automatically masking, say, credit card numbers or social security numbers so the AI can maybe use the fact that a number exists, but the sensitive raw data itself isn't exposed. Then, kind of related, is comprehensive logging and auditing. This is non-negotiable.
Log everything.
Every significant event, every tool use, every access grant or denial, every change to a tool's registration. All of it needs to be logged centrally, ideally feeding into your song system, your security information, and event management platform. For forensics, for real-time alerting.
Okay, and let's say the monitoring the sandbox or the behavioral checks actually flags something bad. What's the incident response plan look like for MCP specifically?
You need tailored playbooks. Standard IT incident response won't quite cover it. The plan has to include procedures for quickly isolating any compromised MCP components, servers, specific tools, and probably most importantly, you need the ability to immediately quarantine suspicious tools. If a tool starts acting weirdly, you need to pull it from service instantly across the board to stop potential damage from spreading through the agent ecosystem.
Right, containment is key. Okay, that's a lot to take in. Let me try to sum up this deep dive. MCP is powerful, lets AI do amazing things with tools and data. But
But because the AI is making dynamic choices about running code, essentially.
your old school API security blanket just isn't warm enough.
Nicely put.
The defense has to shift inward. Continuous validation for every request, super aggressive vetting and sandboxing for tools, and embracing that zero trust idea, never trust, always verify, right down to the individual data packets.
That's the core of it. Now, implementing that full stack, the sandboxing, the deep output inspection, the constant per-request authorization, it offers strong protection. But, and this is the big takeaway thought, I think, it raises a really critical question for you listening and for any organization adopting this. Can you actually maintain this incredibly high level of security overhead? The mandatory sandboxing, the DLP scanning, the continuous validation. Can you do all that without grinding performance to a halt?
Right.
Without killing the speed, the agility, the sheer developer usability that makes integrating these AI agents so attractive in the first place? Where is that balance point?
That tension, that trade-off between the necessary security rigor and the operational speed and agility you want from AI, that seems like the defining challenge here. Definitely something to chew on as you think about deploying these powerful new capabilities. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.